Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get started again. Alan, we're going to need Michelle here pretty quick, okay? All right, thank you. Thank you so much for your attention. Now, a very important element of the discussions today revolve around the financial aspects of this initiative for our community. Funding strategies, debt service, how the nuts and bolts, dollars and cents fit together. Here to present that information to us is Michelle Bonner, Assistant City Manager for the City of Amarillo. She has been in that position. You've worked for the city for how long?
23 years.
23 years. You started when you were
12
years old. Michelle Bonner.
Thank you. Do you want to go to the next? Oh, dang, I'm technically challenged. Okay. It went? Good. Okay, this is the latest pro forma, and this pro forma is based, it was revised just this month, and it is based on, the main changes are, we have new construction estimates from Lavin Architects, and we also have revised streetscape estimates on the parking garage and the hotel. So I want to go over this pro forma first, and then some of you, I know when we did these meetings last fall, we had these handouts, and this information was based on another pro forma, and so I'm going to go over the changes with you as well. The total projected cost, and this is for the parking garage and the MPEV, is $49,817,000. This pro forma that I'm showing you does not include the retail space on the parking garage. The retail space on the parking garage is estimated by Lavin at $3.4 million. And I had our financial advisor look at that and basically do a projection on if the city were to fund that with bonds, and we looked at $4 million because there is going to have to be some cost associated with the finish out of that retail space. That debt service would be $325,000 a year. So that we might need to talk about later, but what I want to do is go over the pro forma for the parking garage and the MPEV. The parking garage, as estimated by Lavin Architect, is $14,252,000. The MPEV was basically done, the projections on that are $27.8 million, and that was done by Wallace Bajali. That was an estimate they did 2 years ago on what and I don't believe they actually prepared the estimate themselves. They consulted with someone to do that. The development fee and council fee of $177,500, that is the amount that was due based on the parking garage developer agreement that is no longer in existence. That amount was $177,500 and has not been paid out yet. The streetscape for the parking garage is $854,000. The streetscape on the hotel is $622,000, and then an estimate on the streetscape for the MPEV is $1,458,000. There's also public infrastructure associated with this project. There are 3 that I have labeled that were estimated by Wallace Bajali in the original preparation of this, in the original pro forma, and that's the site demolition, the street and sidewalk demolition, and reopening of 8th Avenue of approximately $1.7 million. And then there are utility costs of $2.9 million for a total project of $49.8 million. The utility costs are actually projects that are existing. There are 3 projects that have been identified, and that's the downtown sewer main relocations of $1.2 million, the downtown water main relocations of $250,000, and the project that's just starting to relocate the downtown utilities of $1,427,000. Some of that cost it has expanded over what it was prior, and some of that is just while they're in there doing that work, they have expanded that. that project. The next page is your sources. How are we going to fund this project? And what we looked at when we originally started this, and I've been working on this project for the last 2 years, so it was after the original pro forma was done, is we looked at how much debt service can be funded by the project, and then how much will that generate in bond proceeds. And then we backed into, well, how much cash will we need to fund the complete project? So in this pro forma, you have bond proceeds of $33.5 million, general construction funds of $2.4 million, Civic Center Improvement Fund funding of $7.2 million. And I want to point out that $2.2 million of that would be budgeted in 15-16 and 16-17. We've identified $1.1 million. $550,000 of that would be from the CVC, and $550,000 of that, and this is hot tax, would be funded by the city. And that was originally identified to fund the debt service. Well, what we've done is we've set that money aside. This will be our third year. We set that money aside to help fund the project. So we would need 2 more years of funding of the $1.1 million that would go directly into the project. And then after that, we'd start using that money to fund debt service. Our utility funds of $2.4 million, those are the 3 projects I just reviewed. And then Tiers has committed $2.7 million for the project. Center City has committed $500,000. And Potter County agreement that was done in January 15 is $1,089,000. So those are your funding sources, $49,817,000. This next slide shows you the changes from what was showed and presented to the community in August as to what the pro forma is now. In August of 14, the pro forma was almost $46.5 million. And the changes are that we have an increase in the estimate on the parking garage construction of $2,461,000. And again, those construction estimates have been prepared by the architect. A small change on the landscape estimate, and the landscape estimates have also been redone as well, of $8,700. And then the change in the utility project scope of $879,000. And remember, the utility piece is being funded by the utilities. So the water and sewer fund and the drainage fund are funding those. So that would not be anything that would be funded by bond proceeds. So how are we going to fund those changes? Well, Potter County's committed $1,089,000 to help with the construction. We'd need 1 more year of the $1.1 million of the hot tax funding. We've upsized the bond issue by $614,000. A small change in the general construction funding to cover those future anticipated public infrastructure costs of $20,498, and then a change to offset the utility funding of $527,000. So those are your changes from what was presented in August. Your next slide is how will we fund the debt service? The debt service on bonds issued for the parking garage and the MPEV construction are going to be right at $2.7 million annually. Now, in the original financing agreement, the Civic Center added a facility fee. They also increased their rents. That generated about $400,000. Now, to the extent, and we're going to go over it in a few slides, is the city uses the hot tax, their share of the hot tax, to cover the total operations of the Civic Center. So when we've increased revenue on the Civic Center side, it increases the transfer that goes over to the Civic Center Improvement Fund, and that's where that money is sitting that can be used to fund the project. The hotel agreement identifies $120,000 to be used for parking, And then the parking net revenue is $425,000. I have that highlighted in yellow because that is not an existing revenue stream. That's a revenue stream that's anticipated with the construction of the parking garage. That number came from a study that DAI had contracted with Jacobs to do. And I have that study. I believe Melissa has it. You have the updated study and the updated pro forma on the website.
I'm sorry, I think that's what Mark had asked for earlier, Councilman Nair. That's not on our website,
Okay.
So we do need to provide that.
But that's where those numbers came from. The MPEV contractual revenue of $250,000, that's an anticipated number. That revenue stream is not in place and would need to be looked at if we going forward with this project. When you're looking at the MPEV, that would need to be looked at. But that money is anticipated to help fund the debt service. Now, the citywide hot tax, I'm showing that at $1.5 million. We had discussed $1.1 million to fund the project, $550 from the city and $550 from the CVC portion of the hot tax. Because of the changes, the increase on the construction piece on the parking garage and the parking net revenue number of $425, that's actually down from what had been anticipated. When we looked at this back in August, it's down about $200,000. So that's going to mean we're going to need another $400,000 to fund this project. Now, it's not anticipated we would need that money for till 2019 and 20 because the way these debt is structured, we're going to do interest only for the first 2 years. We're going to fund the very first year of interest through the bond proceeds. So what that would do is it would give us 3 years to get these projects constructed and up and going. This is just a history of a 6-year history of your hotel tax. It's been very strong. We're anticipating 2014-15, the year we're in now, is going to be right at $6.2 million. Now, how are your hot tax monies spent? So for 2014-15, we have a revised estimate number of $6,270,000. The city's share of that is 3.5%, or $3,135,000. The CVC shares is 3%, or $2,687,000. And then there's a half cent for the Civic Center Activity Fund of $447,904. The Civic Center Activity Fund is used to help fund and promote convention activities. Historically, that would have been convention activities here at the Civic Center. Well, in October, the council approved to let that be activities, convention activities in governmental facilities in Potter and Randall County. If you look at the city's share, the city's allocated $3,135,000. The city anticipates using $1,905,000 to fully fund all Civic Center activities in the general fund. And then the balance of that, $1,230,000, would be transferred over to the Civic Center Improvement Fund to be used for construction projects or to fund debt service. If you look at the CVC side, their share is $2,687,000. $550,000 of that, they will be transferred over to the Civic Center Improvement Fund to help fund the project. And then the balance, $2,137,000, would be used to fund CVC operations. I want to talk a little bit about the transfer over to the Civic Center Improvement Fund, $1,780,000 anticipated for this year. So how is that money spent? If we had our debt service right now and we were funding debt service, the $1,780,000 that's being transferred over, $550,000 of that came over from the city share of hot tax to use to pay the debt service. Another $550,000 came from the CVC share. And then we have two things, the facility fee of $250,000 and the Civic Center increased revenue of $150,000. That's $400,000. And that money is revenue to the general fund to fund Civic Center operations, but to the extent it offsets expenses, it increased the amount of the transfer. So when you take those amounts out, just based on this year's funding, that leaves $280,000 left for this 1 year that would be used for improvements for the Civic Center facility. Any questions? A lot of questions? Now, I've attached to your handout, the last 2 pages is a detailed listing of all of this that shows it by project, as well as the pro forma on the debt service. It shows the very first pro forma that anticipated $3 million for financing, the revised pro forma done in August that has $2.5 million anticipated to fund debt service, and then the one that is based on the most current information we have as the funding would be at $2.7 million annually to fund the project.
Questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
On pages for me, I guess it was screen 3, sources of the project, the sources of revenue. I don't know if we can go back to that. It's right after the first screen on the pro forma.
Sources of the project?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you walk us through that one more time?
Sure. We anticipate bond proceeds of $33,556,000. So that's the amount of the project that would be financed by bonds, and those would be 2 bond issues, one for the garage and $15 million, and one for the MPEV of $23.2 million. Now, the annual debt service on both of those issues is $2.7 million. So based on the work that we've done, we can't really go higher than $2.7 million to fund bonds. So the balance of the project needs to be funded from cash.
Okay.
The General Construction Fund has money set aside of $2,391,000. Mainly that money is anticipated to be used to fund the public infrastructure cost, which would be the site demolition, the street and sidewalk demolition, and reopen 8th Avenue. So that would mainly be used to fund that.
And that fund is that just general revenue fund?
The General Construction Fund funds all the capital projects for the general fund. So every year when we do our budget, we would anticipate a certain dollar amount. And mainly how we do that is we look at our reserves, and we always rebalance our reserves to 90 days operating. And any amount over that, we ask the council that we transfer over to the General Construction Fund, and then that money is used to fund capital projects. So if we added streets, or if we added parks, splash pads, that sort of thing.
Okay, so I just want to be really clear, because in conversations that I've had with people outside, the way I describe this is there is private money with incentives that we talked about already. There's hot money, the hot tax money, but there is also general revenue money.
Correct. The money that's been transferred over to the General Construction Fund, we have $2,391,000.
Okay, thank you.
To fund public infrastructure.
Gotcha, thanks.
And then there is funding from the Civic Center Improvement Fund of $7.2 million. Now, a portion of that has been budgeted for previously. So $2,398,000 of that has already been budgeted for, and when we budget for a construction project, that money sits in a separate project, and it's not like a regular police department budget. At the end of the year, if they've underspent their budget, that money rolls back into fund balance. On our capital projects, when we've budgeted for it, sits there and it's available, because most of our capital projects go over multiple years to get them done. So $2,398,000 has already been approved for and is sitting in budgets. I anticipate asking the council that we would use for 1516, the $1.1 million that we've identified on the original pro forma. We would ask the council to set that money aside, And then in 16-17, another $1.1 million. And then we anticipate using reserves from the hot tax of $2,567,000 to completely fund the project. I don't have the detail on the slide because I don't think we had a big enough screen for all that, but it is in the handout I gave you.
Great, thank you. One other quick question, which is based on the sources of the project still.
Mm-hmm.
The city utility funds, so we have water, sewage, and drainage. And then I noticed, Melissa, on the thing on the DAI website, it said sources of funds for the hotel or public commitment funds. One was drainage fund cash. Is that included? Is this where that line is?
Which document are you referring to? Do you know?
I don't know the name of it, but it talked about sources, public commitment, sources of funds, especially for the hotel. It talked about the incentives, and then there's a line that said drainage fund cash.
It may have been it's hard to say because as time has gone on, those numbers have been updated, but it may have been the original Wallace-Pajali report. I'm guessing the final report, which was, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. But, without looking at it, I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just assuming now that I read the sources of funds, I'm assuming that it fits into the utility area of where we're drawing the funds.
The only additional utilities that had been, and that's why on the pro forma I separated out the public infrastructure because it became harder and harder to identify what was garage and what was hotel because those projects are happening. The Pierce Street project on the sewer side has already been done, and then the drainage side is just in the last couple of months been approved by council, so they're starting on that on the Buchanan side.
Great.
So I went ahead and put that in a separate column, and so the only projects that are left on the public infrastructure are the site demolition, the street and sidewalk demolition, and reopen 8th Avenue.
Okay, I see it. Thank you.
Okay.
Is that it, Michelle? Michelle, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. And once again, fellow citizens, I'm proud of Amarillo, Texas for sitting here through this. So you need to applaud yourselves for your continued patience and attentiveness to the matters here. We are now going to talk about the economic impacts of the efforts here in downtown, and John Lutz is going to do that. John is the chair of Downtown Amarillo, Inc., and is Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Davidson Oil. John?
Thank you very much, City Council and LGC, for giving me the opportunity to speak here today. And I applaud the crowd today for having the patience to sit through and to listen to really a depth of work that has been over many, many years. And I can't think about many, many years without thinking about my own connection to downtown. My connection, I was born in Amarillo, raised in Amarillo, and my connection to downtown started with my family's business. My folks had Mary Carter Paint Store at 2106 South Tyler, and I grew up in that family business, and I grew up working in the Central Business District. And I can remember working with my father, who's now deceased, and I remember waiting for those 6 tones of Polk Street bells to indicate it was time to go home at the end of the day. And I have very fond memories of that, and that's where my connection to downtown. My parents were of that greatest generation, and they taught me the value of the Central Business District in downtown. I live downtown. I live in Plymouth-Zeckle. I work downtown. My commitment to downtown began with Center City. I was a member of the board. I hosted 2 block parties. I was later asked to join DAI, and I've had the honor of serving with a number of very fine people in putting this plan together over the past several years. Several months ago, I was asked to join the LGC, and it's been a true honor to serve this city in this very fine endeavor. So I've got these emotional connections to downtown. But those connections at the end of the day really don't matter. What matters is the economic impact that these projects have. That when we look at Michelle's numbers and we look at all of these things together, we want to be able to confidently say that at the end of the day, there's a significant return on investment for all of the effort and for all of the dollars that have been put into this project. And so I've been asked to highlight a bit of the economic impact to downtown. So when you look at the downtown property values from 1985 to 2005, you'll notice there are two lines there. The blue upper line indicates what our downtown property growth rate would be had it grown at the same rate as the rest of the city. And you can see that had the downtown property values grown, they would have been up in the $450,000 range. But they didn't grow. They, in fact, were at a flat line. And so therefore downtown was not an economic asset to this community. And I think that that's really where a lot of the vision began on this, is because people could see that rather than being an economic engine for downtown, it was beginning to be an economic drain. And so we began to organize our thoughts, we began to organize ourselves, and we began to put a plan in place. And you can see that once we began to do that, in 2006, the property growth rate in Amarillo began an upward tick, and it began to mimic the exact growth rate of the city at large, to where, as I have here, since 2006, the values of downtown properties have increased 28%. And I think that value alone is significant to our city. But when you look at the value of these projects in general, and you look at all the studies that have been in place, you can really boil these concepts down to a few simple things. What we have to do is get people to live, work, and play downtown. And if we can do that, I feel that our efforts will be successful. And so what I'd like to do is walk through some of the efforts, the investments that have been made in support of living, working, and playing in downtown, and illustrate some of the value of these projects. Let me be clear that some of the values came directly from the developers, and some of these are estimated as we walk through these projects. So again, in terms of living downtown, here's the redevelopment of the Vineyard Manor. This added 16 residential units. It's got retail at the ground level, and it was a $1.5 million project. Actually, I had a woman stop me the other day and tell me how much she loves living in this facility, how much she loves living in downtown. This is a project which is going to be incredibly impactful to not only downtown, but our community at large. The Park Central Memory Care Center, which is estimated to be a $5.6 million project of new construction on currently vacant lots. It'll offer 50 residential opportunities for those folks in need of memory care, and we look for that to open in spring of 2016. Here's an example of folks who made the decision to both live and work downtown. If you go by the Overhead Builders facility on the corner of Taylor, and I invite you to figure out an excuse to go by and see this, these folks actually both live and work at this facility. They live in the top floor, they work in the bottom floor, and that project was right at about $900,000. This is the Lofts on 10th, about a $1.7 million project, 7 residential units with retail at the ground level, and this currently has, as I understand, a waiting list for folks wanting to live at this facility. They've also got committed tenants, the cut salon and blowout bar, Amarillo Man, and curated clothiers. So you're going to see this activated as that residential and retail concept. This is actually the Firestone project. It's a $2.5 million project. It's going to be about 12 to 14 residential units. This is you often see these Firestone buildings across Texas as part of downtown heritage, and I'm delighted to see that this building is going to be restored and serve as an asset for downtown. Clemens Village, again, an opportunity to live downtown, $2.5 million, 16 residential units, retail at the ground level. This is a big one. We have seen for many years, unfortunately, one of our what were we calling it before? One of our queens at what I consider first in Maine to need some help. This is the Barfield redevelopment. We've got people today that have purchased the Barfield and have proposed a $12 million redevelopment of this vacant building. This will involve 45 residential units, retail at the ground level, and I think will be a substantial move forward for our downtown. When we look at the opportunity to live in downtown and the potential for development, we've got an incredible resource in our warehouse district. When you drive those streets, and if you've been to other communities that have really taken advantage of a warehouse district, you can squint and you can see these warehouses serving as loft apartments. And you can see the potential that we have for these residential spaces to work in concert with our catalyst projects. And so when we think about working downtown, we have Charles Lynch, who took his own risk and actually bought a building that's on the other side of Arthur in what they're terming the Depot District. And he spent $600,000 to redevelop 2 vacant buildings. This has not only been a great project, but it also has won some design awards that I know that not only Chuck, but our community can be very, very proud of. Davidson Oil made the decision to combine 3 of its operations in downtown and redeveloped a vacant building for an estimated value of $1.8 million. And that has been a great project for Davidson Oil and for downtown. The Greyhound building, again, one of those iconic structures who is currently being renovated by Canyon Exploration, a project estimated at about $1.2 million. This is a redevelopment of a vacant building to be used as offices, and so I'm sure that'll be a great place for people to work. Herring Bank announced a couple weeks ago that they're moving forward with a $1 million project to redevelop the long vacant historic Blackburn's Funeral Home. This will be made into a bank and drive-up facility, and again, a great investment in downtown. The Toot and Totem project. This was a great opportunity for downtown. This brought one of those key services to downtown in terms of providing the folks who live here and work here and play here the service of a convenience store and the service for motoring public. I see that not only has it's been successful, they're actually expanding it as we speak, and so we appreciate that investment in downtown. We had Excel providing much more detail than I probably need to in terms of the $42 million facility. I think it's interesting that this facility only would need to employ about or hold about 300 people, but they're actually building it to accommodate 525 employees, not only in terms of office accommodation, but parking accommodation. And I think that speaks to Excel's commitment to downtown and to our area, and we look forward to them growing in our community. The builder of this facility is a group based out of Minneapolis, and we've been told, and you heard him say earlier, that he chose to locate this facility across from the MPEV in order to be in an active urban location. And 1/4 of their employees are going to be retiring over the next couple of years, and they see this downtown urban environment to be critical to attracting new professionals to Amarillo. We've got the Burrito Stop, which was about a $500,000 project. This was, again, a redevelopment of a vacant building on 9th. And then a host of other places to play in terms of places to eat: Rain, Potato Factory, Wild Cupcake, Palace Coffee, Burrito Stop, Poblanos. Our choices are expanding, and with this project moving forward, they will continue to expand. I'm glad that Chuck was here earlier. I did, and of course I put my presentation together before he came, but I do think it's important to honor that, or recognize the fact that Mr. Patel is not new to Amarillo. He has a current investment in downtown in terms of his investment in the Courtyard by Marriott at Fisk. We have folks that come to visit us for our business, and they speak so highly of this facility. And even though it is difficult to get in by virtue of its rate, in terms of it's a very popular place to stay, people just say that when they come and when they're able to stay there, they always choose this hotel. We're very proud of that. Councilman Nair mentioned green space, and this is an example of a pocket park that A&V had a ribbon cutting last week, and we see green spaces playing a role in downtown as we look to play and have entertainment options in downtown. This is very interesting. This is a brand new proposed restaurant called Cantas Serranas. It's about a $700,000 new construction. As I understand, it's probably one of the first new construction of a restaurant in downtown. This is across from Toot and Totem and Happy State Bank, and I think it again bespeaks of the nature and vision that people are seeing in downtown. We talked about earlier, Frida was kind enough to walk us through the Tiger development that we have made a grant request to the federal government. If successful, we will come back. The council was kind enough to provide us the support to make our grant proposal with the government, and we look forward to hopefully receiving those funds and getting started on that to be able to really do something significant on Polk Street. And you know, when you go and you talk to people, people have a lot of emotional attachment to Polk Street. And I'm glad that our efforts are touching different parts of downtown. Again, another example of a green space. The redevelopment of the Liberty Theater to include a park space is a part of the different plan that we are managing and putting forth as part of these processes to move forward. So when you look at the financial impact of all these things, I think the thing that you continue to hear, or I hope you heard from me, was the word million, million, million. And these things add up. And I think Scott indicated it earlier that we estimate that there's been about $71.6 million in private investment and about $30.4 million in public investment. And again, that's million. And it feels great to stand up here because I grew up here, I want to live here. It feels great to be able to say millions of dollars of investment have come into downtown because of this. So what are some other economic impacts? Well, our Civic Center only hosts about 77 conventions per year. Abilene hosts about 300 conventions per year. I offer my sincere respect to our friends in Abilene. I think we can do better, and I think we have more to offer than Abilene. I've been to Abilene, and I know we have more to offer, and I think the convention hotel would put us in the position to be much more competitive and to be able to raise that number. If we can double that number from 77 to 150, that would have a significant economic impact in downtown and the city at large. The jobs creation, which these figures actually came from the various studies because jobs creation is an important part of these. We expect about 100 full-time and part-time jobs to be created at the convention hotel. We expect about 76 full-time and part-time jobs to be created at the MPEV, right at about 200 during construction. We're excited that, again, the Excel folks are building they're building to accommodate for an expansion of their workforce to 525. And the retail that we discussed earlier in terms of the fully staffed retail facility would probably create about 48 to 50 jobs. So when we look at what we've done, that's very exciting, but we still have a lot of opportunity in that there are still buildings to be remodeled. There are still opportunities to be had. There still are investments to be made. We are not at the end of the cycle. We are at the beginning of the cycle. And I think that beginning bespeaks of a lot of opportunity for us down the road should we continue with our current plan. So that's the stuff I can tell you I have seen. Those are the things I can go to studies, or those are things I can go to PRAD documents and quantify. This is the thing, if you ask me, this is the thing that is most important of all of this. And that is, when you think of our city and our ability to attract and retain millennials, which I really never thought I was going to stand up in front of a public body one day and act like an old man. I don't get those millennials. I didn't think that was going to be me, but that's me. I don't get them. And you know why I don't get them? Because when I graduated, I didn't care where I went to work. I was going to go and I was going to make the most money. And if they just said Walla Walla, Washington, I just said, I don't know where it is, but it sounds great. That's not the decision process that millennials go through. Millennials choose where they want to live first. And they choose that based upon, I hate to say it, but is it cool? They want to live someplace that's cool. And the way they define cool is that well, first of all, it's about 25% of the population is in this millennial range. But 62 of them indicate that they prefer to live in the type of mixed-use communities found in urban centers, where they can be close to shops, restaurants, and offices. They want to live, work, and play downtown. And for the first time since the 1920s, the growth rate in U.S. cities actually outpaces the suburbs outside of them. These are citations from a Nielsen study that was done in March of 2014. The other side of the coin is the baby boomers. This is the the baby boomers, 50% of baby boomers say that when their kids move out, they want a smaller home. And when their kids leave the nest, they want to downsize. And between 2000 and 2010, more than 1 million baby boomers moved out of areas 40 to 80 miles away from center cities. 40 to 80 miles away from the center of city to the center of the city. And baby boomers are shown to have a preference for areas that have smart growth because they're kind of tired of urban sprawl. And again, these preferences were indicated as part of a national survey done by realtors. And this is where the millennials are living, and this is where the boomers are living. And so why is that important? Why is that important? It's important because these are the folks that are going to pay tax. These are the folks that are going to pay tax as our city continues to evolve. Oftentimes people will ask me, why do you do this? Why are you so invested in downtown? Now, yeah, I've indicated earlier that I've got some emotional interest in it. But at the end of the day, the reason I do this is because I want there to be a chance that my kids will live here one day. And not because I just want them to be close, but because my kids are smart, they're going to be successful, and you know what? They're going to go pay a lot of tax somewhere. And I'd like for them to pay it here. And I'd like for them to support our city moving forward. And so I think this is... We always say that Amarillo is a great place to raise kids, but then we don't keep them. I want to raise these kids. I want to raise these great kids. I don't want to keep them. I want to keep them right here. And I think that this course puts us in a position where we can offer these services, this value, this urban feel that they want and that they've indicated that they want. So lastly, I want to talk about 2 more economic values. I was in Frisco a number of weeks ago. I alluded to that earlier. Went down there, stayed at the Embassy Suites, actually saw Mr. Patel's brand new hotel across the street. We got there, and they were having a movie night at the ballpark across the street. It was 100 people out there. They were watching the scoreboard, blankets. You know, it looked, in a weird way, it just had this kind of nostalgic feel to it. It was that thing we don't do anymore, which is just get together. And then the next night, we went out, and unbeknownst to us, there was a concert in their city square. And everybody was out there. They were in their lawn chairs. Beautiful evening. It was gorgeous. So what's the value of that? What's the economic value of having a place where we can come together as a city and be Amarillo and enjoy one another's company and quit fighting on Facebook and engage each other face to face and be the community that we know we are? What's the economic value of that? What's the economic value of teaching our kids it's okay to dream? Have big dreams. Do your homework. Make a good plan. Make sure your business models are good. Make sure you got somebody like Michelle Bonner over there checking the numbers. But dream big. Dream big. I think the economic value of that is immeasurable. And I think if we go forward with our current plan, I think we put ourselves in a position where we can have a fundamental change in this town that will speak volumes for a lifetime. I often think about the people who built the Civic Center when the base just closed. My gosh, could you imagine how crazy people thought they were? Could you imagine if Facebook had been around there? It would have been something to see. But they did it. And you know what? Today, we celebrate their vision and we celebrate their passion for the city, and we don't know what we'd do without the Civic Center. Same thing as the medical community. How many times do you hear people say what value there is to the medical community out there? And what would we do without it? I'm so thankful to the council that you've come today to listen. I'm so thankful to you for asking great questions, and you have asked great questions. I'm so thankful to you that you're putting us in a position to provide the information that I hopefully feel like that you can make a positive decision for Amarillo and put us on a course to where we can take advantage of the opportunity that's right there and ready to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Your kids would be proud. Questions?
John, I really appreciate your passion about the project and your passion about the city. I think that that's something that we all share.
You're
probably
right.
Probably
You're
not
right.
articulated as well, but we do. My only question really is, besides the time, the sweat equity put into the project, what do you think is the investment that we as a group of Amarillo has put into this project so far? You know, including paying for the land, everything going on. What would be your estimate of that?
In terms of a dollar volume?
Yeah. And the reason I ask this question, while you're thinking, is because in the public, where I completely intend to go after this meeting to tell people what I've learned, I want to say we have invested this much so far. So we've talked earlier about the clod of dirt problem. I don't want to see a clod of dirt out there either. Nobody does. But I do want to explain that we have invested a certain amount of money into the clod of dirt, into the clump of dirt, and we have to do something with that investment. So that, as you speak about investments in the community, that's what I'm trying to get to.
Sure. Would you allow me to come back to you with that answer? And I would encourage you to share it publicly, just instead of putting something out there that
No,
maybe...
you only have a half of a second. Come on.
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, okay. I will do that. You have my commitment. I'll get you that number.
Thank you.
Sure.
Additional questions? None? Thank you, John.
Yes,
Well,
John.
Councilman Demers.
As I sit here, it is obvious from the attendance that people are interested in perhaps getting the flavor of where the new council members are going, and this has been very informative, and I appreciate that. I continue to go back, and while you were talking, I went back to the DAI strategic plan that was developed in 2008. I hope that, and maybe this is more of a statement, I hope that we can partner with DAI as we choose to take this plan and instead of concluding that it is a finished document, to recognize it as a living document and look at it with a different set of eyes in 2015 and say, does that document still stand as robust in June 2015 as it did in 2008? And if we choose to modify or even go in a different direction, that we can still call on people like you to help us to flesh out what we envision as a stronger, someone said, a stronger augmentation to the plan. Hopefully we can depend on you.
Oh, absolutely you can depend on me. Absolutely you can depend on me. The only thing I would say in return, and I say this with the utmost respect, is that we have a gentleman here who wants to put $45 million into this project, and he's ready to go. He told you that. And the thing that I don't want to do is I want to do what's right, and councilman, I want to do what you're comfortable with, and I want to give every single person in this decision-making process the information they need. And you have my commitment that you have my open mind, my sense of service, and you have my support. The only thing I would ask in return is that we can do things in such a way that honors Mr. Patel, because he has $45 million and he's ready to go. And I would hate to lose that opportunity, because I think, as he mentioned earlier, he's ready to go. He's ready to move forward with us. He's an honored member of our business community, and I feel a commitment to him by virtue of my service to DAI. I feel a commitment to him that we don't wait too long. So you have my commitment to do whatever we need to do that's best for Amarillo. I just ask you that if we can do this in a way that it honors him, absolutely.
And in that regard, none of us and in regards to that, as a sitting member of the council, I can tell you that Elisha Demerson does not want to see a clump of dirt neither in the immediate future nor the foreseeable future. And we'll be working to that end to ensure that there is not a clump of dirt at the end of this exercise. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
As we've said all along, there are a lot of moving parts in a project of this nature, and one of the parts is the Amarillo Local Government Corporation, the creature that is rooted in Texas state statute that allows municipalities to create such to implement projects of this nature. Richard Brown is the president of the Amarillo Local Government Corporation. Richard is the co-founder of Amarillo's Brown and Fortunato law firm, and he is here to tell us about the LGC and the work of the LGC regarding our downtown development efforts. Richard, thank you.
I am the last formal presenter of today, which I'm sure you guys will be glad to hear. I do want to especially thank the council for agreeing to spend this day with us and accept that it has been our mission to try to catch you up on what has happened in the previous years so that you are not at a disadvantage in not knowing the history and not knowing what's inside the heads of other people who have seen things going on. So we've done our best to pull those things together to help you make the best decisions going forward as to what the future course should be. My part of the program today is to focus on the LGC side. Other than working for a law firm that pays some rent downtown, I have no financial interest in downtown. So I'm just here as the LGC. The LGC, I'm going to talk about some of the mechanics, who they are and what they're doing. And then I'm going to talk about why they're doing those things. I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of how we got here doing those things, and then some about where are we now and what might come next. It's particularly important that the council does have clarity on their relationship with the local government corporation because we work for you, and we are charged with carrying out what you want us to do. The local government corporation is created by statute. You can't change that, so the statute is what it is. But it is beyond that, created by bylaws and by resolutions from the council telling us what to do, and you do have control over that. There are two existing resolutions from the City Council telling us what to do as the Amarillo Local Government Corporation. And those specifically deal with the hotel, the parking garage, and the multi-purpose entertainment venue, the projects. And I will talk about those two resolutions in some detail in a moment. But just simplified, the LGC was expressly tasked with exploring the feasibility, the financing, and the construction of these three projects. There was an original board of 7 members, and as it was created in March of 2011, and most of them are still here today. Currently serving, I am serving as president. Glenn Parkey is vice president. He's on sort of medical leave now. Ron Boyd, Les Simpson, John Lutz, Brian Eads, Lily Escajeda. And we are the ones at this point charged with carrying out your wishes on these projects. Each of the current members of the LGC board has years of experience on these projects and other downtown projects. Obviously, the original board had been here since 2011 on this specific task, and then the replacements, when Jim Sims died, he was replaced by Lily Escajeda in 2014, and she had previously served on the tiers and was well aware of the projects that were ongoing. And then when Gary Pittner had to resign for personal reasons, he was replaced by John Lutz, who is the current president of Downtown Amarillo, Inc., so he also had a good familiarity with the projects. So the board, as constituted, I think each of them knows quite a bit about what's gone on in the past. The board serves for 3-year terms. All right, so how are we doing it? How are we spending our time? The board has kind of regular monthly meetings, but not always. For example, when we were negotiating the contracts, we could go months without a meeting because we were in the back room hacking out contract terms with whoever it was we were negotiating with. When things got busy, frequently the LGC board meets more often than that. There is a project advisory committee that meets almost weekly. That's usually for 2 or 3 hours a week. So collectively, the volunteers appointed by you, the council, have spent thousands of hours on 71 public meetings, approximately 200 work and planning sessions, 5 field trips to inspect and analyze comparable hotels, parking garages, and baseball stadiums, and to review and negotiate more than 20 contracts with hundreds of pages of provisions, plus an additional hundreds of other meetings with related organizations and on similar projects. You should also be clear on the fact that we are heavily dependent on the city staff to carry out your wishes. Under the bylaws, the city manager and the city staff are charged with helping the LGC to meet its objectives. So we don't have any people except your people, your city people. And we don't have any money except your money. So we are still heavily dependent on the city to carry out our task. And then within the city, the people who help us the most to do what you want to do are the city manager, Jared Atkinson, city attorney, Marcus Norris, Michelle Bonner for finance, and Bob Cowell, facilities. Those are the principal people who help us, but we know there's lots of others making this work. We also have had some help from outside counsel in Dallas. This council has specific expertise in the kinds of documents that we have required to do this, and so he has been involved in what I would call a limited role because Marcus Norris has served most of the time as the legal advisor to the LGC. So the Project Advisory Committee, which has done a fair amount of the work, the process is Project Advisory Committee considers what it is we have to do and interfaces most closely with the city staff, hammers that down into something that's more manageable, goes back to the LGC to get guidance, goes back into the committee and works from there, goes back to the LGC, and then occasionally we've had to go back to the council and say, now what do you want us to do? The Project Advisory Committee has been composed of 3 people, and historically that's been the president, the vice president, plus one other. That was originally Pittner, Brown, and Parkey. Pittner has been replaced by Boyd, and Parkey is temporarily replaced by Lutz. So we function by making regular reports back to the LGC. We have regular LGC public meetings, and then we are charged under your directions to us to report to you as well, and in certain areas to get your approval before going forward. So what's our mission? What are we supposed to be doing? We're carrying out the plans that were adopted by the City Council for downtown development. We're also charged with cooperating with that whole panoply of acronyms of other Center City organizations. Center City, DAI, TIERS, AEDC, Design Review Board, Civic Center, CVC, Chamber of Commerce. We're in the middle of all that, and why is that? It is supposed to be a public-private partnership to advance these projects. We have public entities that are doing things and that are necessary to make them happen. And then we have private partners whom we expect and hope will bring a lot of money to the table, bring a lot of expertise to the table, and help us to get this done. We are at the center of that in carrying out your wishes. Central to that is carrying out the Citizen Strategic Action Plan from 2008. Now that strategic plan, as it relates to us and what we're supposed to be doing, there is reference to 3 phases in your resolutions telling us what to do. There's a phase 1, which says hotel, parking garage, and MPEV, which some people call the ballpark. There's a phase 2, which is loosely, let's do something with the Civic Center. And there's a phase 3, which is loosely, let's do something north of the Civic Center. We aren't doing anything except focusing on phase 1 because we haven't gotten it done yet. So what have we been doing? Well, first let's look at what it is you told us to do. In the resolution of August 23, 2011, the council said, we've engaged consultants, we've conducted feasibility studies, we've done appraisals, we've had public forums, and other pursuit endeavors for a multipurpose event venue facility, a convention center hotel, and structured parking. We've formed these other entities to coordinate and promote downtown redevelopment and engage consultants. We've conducted public meetings. We've had hearings about these future plans. And through the staff and contractors and advisors and consultants, we've independently reviewed all of that and found it to be based on reasonable assumptions. And we've talked to all these other city entities that want us to go forward, so we will. And then that resolution is where it identifies in phase 1 downtown redevelopment, which is development of a hotel, the MPEV, and structured parking. and to go forward with the creation of the formal project agreements, the design process. And the council then adopted a pro forma budget, which is included in there and has been there since 2011, saying here's what we think we can do it for based on best available information at the time. And then the council said, and now here's what we really want to do. We want you, the Amarillo Local Government Corporation, and the city manager to go do these things. Continue the unfinished task, continue the refinement of the financial projections, the budgetary structure, and the planning and design of the 3 Phase 1 facilities. Negotiate all the agreements, proceed with the design and construction of these projects identified for Phase 1, oversee the construction of the multipurpose events venue, the hotel, and structured parking. And then the council kept one strong string on us, which was, we've approved the budget that we've put in this resolution, but if you're going to change anything, you come back to us. And then the council also historically has kept 1 or 2 council members on the LGC board, so there's also been plenty of informal communication going on as well. That was the start, and that's where we began. And if you could for a moment put yourselves in our shoes, you just hired a bunch of volunteers, rank amateurs, and said, would you come up with a $100 million project, and I'd like for you to do it by Wednesday. We had a lot to do, and we perhaps weren't the best team on the planet, but we were all you had, and we undertook the task. Now, at that time, you had already engaged the services of a master developer, Wallace Bajali, and the expectation was that Wallace Bajali would bring a great deal of expertise to the table. The expectation was that they would be the operator of these facilities and that they would carry much of the load so that maybe we were more like some kind of run it by us advisory group rather than let's get it done group. I do specifically recall that nobody ever actually asked me to be on the LGC, and if it's not too late, I might want to reconsider, because it didn't play out exactly the way it was envisioned. We spent, I would say, close to 2 years working out our deal, the city's deal, with Wallace Bajali in terms of documenting the projects. How are we going to do this? Hotel, garage, MPEV. So we thrashed that out with Wallace Bajali, and Commissioner Nero, say in response to your earlier inquiry about who was interested, Mr. Patel's deal was basically worked out before we even knew Mr. Patel would ever be involved, because the original deal was essentially inherited by Newcrest. So nobody was involved in the process of negotiating the deal back then except the Wallace Bajali side. As we were negotiating, working out, hacking out those documents, which was quite tedious because there's no go-by. There's nothing out there, oh, this is the way it's done. Now, we had to make all this up. We had to figure this out. And as we were doing that, the city was impatient with let's get on with it. And I would have to say that throughout the process, I felt like the city has moved faster than the private sector, which is amazing to me and goes against all my Republican conservative principles. But I think we did. I think the city was quick to clear off the block over here where the hotel was supposed to be, where the garage is supposed to go. The city was quick to figure out what do we got to do about fixing the drainage. The city was quick to figure out what do we need to do about the utilities. And the city was quick to get the utilities involved in helping us do that part of the process. The other thing that was slowing us down, and again, your question, Commissioner Nair, was, so 4 years, what have we been doing? One of the things that was slowing us down was it's hard to build a ballpark on a site you don't own. And that was one of the ultimate challenges was we've got to have the site, and it was Coca-Cola's site. It took quite a long time to get that deal done. The AEDC took the lead on that. we didn't play any material role in that. And I think also the ADC was pushing very hard to get that done faster, and that it got done, and I'm happy it got done, and we all wish it could have been done sooner, but it took a long time to get that done. So we had, at that point, kind of worked out the deal with Wallace Bajali. The ADC was involved with, let's get the land done. And then we started exploring the possibilities of, okay, how do we carry out the wishes to get these 3 facilities built? And what we continually ran into was a kind of chicken or egg problem. Who goes first? Who's going to do something first? Who's going to spend money out there first? This is a massive downtown development in Amarillo where kind of nothing's happened since 1982. Why should I believe you that it's going to happen now? When faced with those questions, we had difficulty with an answer because what we really had to say was trust us, because we didn't even have the site at that point. As that evolved, and once ADC got committed where we had spent money on the site, or at least were contracted to spend money on the site, our story became more credible when we said, trust us, we are going to carry out the plan. We ran into a few problems. We couldn't get the deal done through Wallace Bajali, and the Newcrest Group, Chuck Patel and his family came on the scene, and we were very interested in pursuing that and changing the deal so that they could handle the hotel piece. Unlike Wallace Bajali as the master developer, they had no interest in doing anything except the hotel. So what had always been thought of as the project with 3 buildings in it had to be split up in order to accommodate our new private partner who was willing to go ahead, but only with the hotel piece. So we then began negotiations with Mr. Patel, and Mr. Patel also had to have his own negotiations with Wallace Bajali, and we had no part of that, and that was his deal with Wallace Bajali. But the principal thing we had to do was chop the project up so that the hotel could be cut off to him, and the rest would still be in the Wallace Bajali camp. And so we were successful in rearranging that, and at that point we had to come back to the council because we had materially changed the deal, and the budget numbers were also changing. So we went back to the council in November of 14, and so we have another council resolution at that time, which was in response to the LGC's specific recommendation that you bifurcate the project to carve off the hotel to Newcrest. And so the resolution that was adopted is fairly similar to the first resolution and basically reaffirms the intent to go ahead with all 3 components of the project. It just changes who is doing which part. And then there were some budget numbers that were put in, and we were given the same essential marching orders to go get this done, and you, the council, kept the same string on us to come back if you're going to change the numbers. So we went back to work. That deal lasted about 30 days. And then we were presented with a circumstance where Wallace Bajali took action which effectively gave us the opportunity to terminate the contract on a Monday about 3, and so at 8 a.m. on Tuesday we fired him. And at that point we were left with, okay, so now what? We've got the hotel piece, we've got the Patel family, they're ready to go. What are we going to do now? And the direction that we have taken is to essentially write the Wallace Bajali crew out and as much as possible fill in with the LGC to do all of those parts that Wallace Bajali was supposed to do. So again, it's kind of amateur hour because all you get, it's me and the other guys on the LGC, and it's your city staff working to get this large project done in a way that will satisfy you and the citizens of Amarillo. So let's pause for a minute and look at the contributions to Phase 1 so far. You asked the question, Commissioner Nair, about Councilman Nair, how much money has been spent. I haven't added it up, but I've got a pretty good idea of all the things that have gone into it. And the first one is the AEDC piece. We got the land, and so whatever that number was, which I think was $8 million, $9 million, somewhere in there, $9 million or so. That's the first piece to get the land. Now, I don't know how you want to score that, because we also wanted to keep Coca-Cola. We also wanted to keep the jobs. And we've also got a nice building out the business park. So we got a lot of things besides the land. But the land was the motivating factor on that expenditure. In addition to just focusing on the site and getting them out of there, there's some site demolition that has to be done, and that's moved across to the city, and it's not been done yet, and so there'll be some cost associated with the site demolition. And then the city is to lease that land to LGC, and so that's kind of the site part. In addition, the city has leased sites for the hotel and the parking garage to the LGC. That was done in 2014. And then, of course, we're the conduit that turns around as landlord and makes the deal on the hotel and the deal on the garage. And so the land has been contributed on those sites, however you want to score that for what is the value of the land. The city and its utility companies have also done work in bringing utilities to the site so that we are prepared to go forward. And that has been done. Right now, you can say to Mr. Patel, the only thing stopping you from hooking up is hooking up, because we're there. And that took a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of money. We called it the big ditch going down the street. We got all the utilities to sign on and do everything in one ditch, I think, for the first time in the history of Amarillo. A lot of that was work that needed to be done anyway, because it's infrastructure from the beginning of time. I don't know how you want to score that, but that also was done in part to get this project done. There were drainage problems and issues on both Pierce and Buchanan. A fair amount of that's already been done. Some is left to be done. And again, some of that would have to be done regardless of whether you're doing this project or not. Tiers has committed $2.7 million for streetscaping. They did that in 2012. Those funds are available and have been standing by since 2012. Tiers also committed $400,000, more or less, as the required match to gain the TxDOT streetscaping grant. That's not directly the Phase 1 projects, but it's filling in the blanks on the street where we had not landscaped before. So it is contributing to the project indirectly. Center City has committed $500,000 for streetscaping to the LGC. That was also by contract in 2012, and those funds are available. DAI has not contributed in the form of money, but they have contributed by taking the lead in much of the work that has been done and in conducting the public meetings, the planning, the coordinating, and they have led the way on additional tasks such as what's the signage going to be, what's the traffic planning, what's the parking planning. So the leadership has come from DAI on that, and Tiers has also funded some of that. Potter County has contributed a little over $1 million in funds for the parking garage in trade for parking over a term of 20 years. Which will help lower our cost on the building. Mr. Patel said I might want to talk about one thing, and that's the commitments that we made. And it's not just with him. There's been more than once, and there's been more than me. And other people standing in front of other good people saying, this is the plan, we've adopted the plan. we're going to carry out this plan. And when we have had responses that said, guarantee me that you will build the MPEV, we have said we cannot do that. We don't own the site. We don't own a ball team. We don't know that it can be done economically. We don't know those answers. So we cannot guarantee it. But we have a plan, and we're trying to get there. Now, the private sector has taken that as enough. That promise was enough to go forward. So where are we on our timeline? Very simply, the city has done its part, really. We got the site done. We've got the garage site lined up. The utilities are done. The drainage are done. Here, the very recent timeline, Xcel's closed their deal in April. In May, Xcel got started, and Coke moved. And in June, the AEDC received and transferred the Coke land, or is going to transfer the Coke land to the city. So here in the last few months, bang, 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 things have been happening to close this up. We have a contract on the hotel that has time fuses in it that have been running, and we have been honoring our side, and Mr. Patel's been honoring his side as we go through the orderly process of reaching the closing, the funding, and moving forward with the construction of the hotel. And so where we are is in July now, July 1. The city should be scraping off the Performing Arts parking lot, and we're not doing that. We should be scraping off the Liberty Theater lot for parking, and we're not doing that. And in August, the garage and hotel should commence, and they're not going to commence. And in December, the MPEV should commence, and it's not going to commence. And by February 2017, everything is supposed to be finished, but it won't be if we don't do something pretty quick. We're now behind on all of our timelines, and on Monday, we got an email from Mr. Patel requesting a 90-day delay on all the deadlines in the contract. I haven't talked to Mr. Patel in several months, and I didn't know what he was going to say when he stood up today. I didn't know whether he was going to say, I'm done and I'm out of here, or I don't care, I'm going to build it anyway. But I do know what I said to him and what others said to him, and that's that we have a plan and we'll try to carry it out. So what's next? Here's what I think. I think it's too late to be against the hotel, and it's too late to be against the garage. We have a contract on the hotel, and we ought to honor it. I think we also ought to do it just because it makes sense. Public funding is essentially complete on the hotel. It's sunk cost. We're done. And now we have someone who wants to spend $45 million to build us a hotel on city land that the city will eventually own. So to me, that's a kind of a foregone conclusion. We really want this piece to happen. Every single indicator says to me that the hotel will drive convention business to us and all the indirect economic benefits and job creation that will follow. We can't do the hotel without doing something about parking. We have an agreement to provide parking, and so we need to get on with doing the parking garage. We also have an agreement with Potter County to provide parking to them in our parking garage. It's also true that the garage parking and retail was an important part of the incentive which drove the hotel to contract with us, and it was also clear that it was a part of the Xcel commitment. In talking with Xcel, very early on, I had the same conversation. Are you going to build the ballpark? And I said, we have a plan. Here's the plan. We've had it for years. We're carrying out the plan. We've done this, this, and this. Will you guarantee we're going to build a ballpark? No, I can't do that. The last conversation I had with Mark Johnson, the vice president in Minnesota, it was, will you landscape those 4 blocks out there while you're getting ready to build a MPEV? I said, no. and I'm not Kevin Costner, we're not going to plant corn. The plan is we're going to build the MPEV if we can, and that's what we will try to do. And they've obviously pushed ahead with their project. So what is the principal risk to us going forward if we say, let's do that hotel, let's do the garage? What's our downside? Without getting down into the weeds, I think the principal risk is if that MPEV is not ultimately built, or if there's not an equivalent substitute, then it's possible that the debt service on the garage will be impaired. That is, we will not be able to get enough money out of the parking revenue to do what we thought we would do. So it'll end up costing us more money, and it'll be harder to cover the debt service. Is that worth it to us? Maybe it is. That's what you guys are all elected to figure out. But to me, that's the principal risk of saying, I'm going ahead with the hotel, and I'm going ahead with the parking garage because it's the right thing to do, and we're going to do it. Personally, I think it's going to work, but that's also what I think is the principal risk, is the debt service if you don't do the other piece. So in my opinion, it's too late to be against the hotel and the garage. And then the second piece of that, in my opinion, it's too early to be against the MPEV. I mean, if we can do what the budget says, the budget that's been in the resolution since 2011, if we can do that, so why would you be against it? It's done essentially with user fees and hot tax. So if you can get it done and then have all these great things happen that follow, if we can do it like that, why wouldn't we go ahead and do it? So if you think we can't do it, then fine. Let's take a pencil to it and figure out, can we or can we not? And if you think we cannot, then let's look at why you believe we cannot. But I say to you, it's too early to be against the MPEV. I mean, all we have at this point is a projection and a pro forma budget. Maybe it's great, maybe it's not. Commissioner Demerson, you talked about wanting it to be a living document. We've already come back to the council and said this didn't work twice. I said let's do it a different way. So it is a living document. You're in charge. We just need to know where we're going. So it's too early, meaning you can't get your pencil out and convince me that I'm wrong, and I can't get my pencil out and convince you that I'm right, because we don't have any A&E. We don't have the architectural engineering. We don't have the operator. We're just starting on that piece. And what's taken us so long? Well, we had all this chaos doing the other stuff, and we didn't have the ground, and we're just now getting to the piece of, okay, so can we really do this garage? But I'll say to you, when we started 4 years ago and said, well, we think we can build a hotel without any increase in the ad valorem tax, we are magic going to build this hotel with private money. Nobody thought that could be done either. It wasn't all private. I just went through the list of the things we did. But we've got somebody coming here to build us a fantastic hotel and spend a lot of money. And that's pretty special. So why aren't we willing to try to go forward to make the other piece work as well? It's not a foregone conclusion that it will work, and it's not a foregone conclusion that it won't work. The budget's going to go back to the council, not now on the MPEV because we're not there yet. We're still on the garage, and we have issues, and we're going to come back to you on that. But I submit to you, no one, including Chuck Patel, expects the city to do something stupid like build a baseball stadium if there's no baseball team. That was never the deal, and he took that risk going forward. And there's no expectation that we will do something stupid. There is only the expectation that we will do our best to carry out the plan. So why are we paralyzed? And I've got to say, we are paralyzed. I mean, things have come unglued in the last 2 months, and we've blown these deadlines. I submit that we're paralyzed by fear, and the fear is that somehow the city is going to get trapped into a bad deal, and we're going to have to pay a lot of money, and we can't quantify the money, but it's going to be bad, and so I'm against it. I think the thing to keep in mind is the city is only on the hook for the debt service. there's no debt service on the hotel, that thing is going. We'll just let it go. It's the debt service on the garage, and it's the debt service on the MPEV. I don't think we're going to have a problem on the garage. And on the MPEV, if you say, okay, what's the worst case? How bad can this be? Let's imagine the stadium goes dark. There's no ball games, there's no weddings, there's no anything. It's just gone dark. So how bad can this be? I don't have a crystal ball, and I can't tell you that, but I've done my share of working the pencil and trying to figure out what that means. And what I think that means is we still will have some hot tax revenue to help cover the debt service, and that it will mostly be covered. And in my mind, the worst possible case, a dark stadium with nothing going on, is $250,000 a year. So in my mind, that's the price for saying, let's do this and let's get going. But think about it. What if we can get close? What if we can almost make this work? What if it almost makes sense? You know, if I could sell you, let's say we're 10% off. We've got about a $32 million tag on the MPEV. What if we're 10% off? We're $3.2 million off. If I could sell you a magic bean for $3.2 million that would get you this hotel built and the garage done and an MPEV and people downtown and things going on, I think a lot of us would say, I want to buy and plant that magic bean because I think it's worth it. We have to be careful. We have to either know it's going to work or at least get close. But today, I think we should all be for doing the MPEV if it can be done as projected. And we should all be working together to make it happen. The private sector was happy with that commitment. And we should renew their trust by renewing the public commitment to this public-private partnership. The LGC has very specific directions from you, the City Council, and we're going to continue to march and do what we can to execute on that plan unless and until you tell us to do something different. If you don't change the marching orders, what I think is going to happen next is we're going to be coming to you very soon and saying, we need some budget amendments tied to the garage. Can we please have that so we can go ahead and build the garage? And then I think we're going to have some issues with the delay that Mr. Patel has asked for on the hotel. And given that that just happened yesterday, the LGC hasn't had a chance to meet or even think about it or know where we are. But the kind of delay, and what we're talking about here is on or before June 30th, yesterday, we should have had the budget, we should have had the building permits, we should have had the financing closed, the equity should have been there, and that project should have been under construction by September 1. We're not, and we're going to have to do something to get it started again. What I think we need from the council is a little help if you want us to close on the hotel and garage. And what I think we need on the MPEV project is a little patience to see if it makes sense to do it the way it was projected or change it up or do something different. But we really need to renew the commitment and the trust that we've had with our private partners. Thank you.
Questions of Mr. Brown?
You answered all my questions as you're talking, so I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Richard, I want to say that well, I can only speak for me. I want to appreciate your candor today, and I appreciate all of your service because it came to me that you've spent a lot of personal hours trying to make this happen. The one question I have, though, is I don't recall. I know I've never been someone that has proposed unraveling the contract that is already in place with regard to the hotel. I'm curious, the delay. Can you speak a little bit more to the delay? What you perceive to have caused this delay, the implementation of the contract with regard to the hotel?
I can speak to that generally, not as your lawyer, and I think that your lawyer may want to say some things to you in executive session about where are you on your contracts if we get down to parsing the language of contracts and seeing where we're going. What I personally think has happened is our private partners don't live in a vacuum, and so they're well aware of the fact that we were having elections, and they're well aware of positions that have been put out in the media as to who thinks what. And I'm sure you're well aware that sometimes that's what you said, and sometimes it's not what you said, and it goes through sometimes too many filters. But it was apparent that the incoming commissioners wanted to take a harder look or a new look or a different look at the plan. And given that you had people who had already committed to projects and a lot of money involved, they all had to look at their whole card and see where they were. And I'm not privy to any of that, but I think SPS was stuck. And I mean, I think they were so far down the road that you could have said anything. You could have said anything. Randy, you could have said anything. It wouldn't have mattered. That their part was going to go on. But not everybody's that far along. And the one we're particularly concerned about with here is the hotel. And yes, we have a contract, but if we sat down and started parsing the language, there are things that we have not done, and there are things that they have not done, and so we could have a fight about who's done what. But if their expectation was there's going to be something in that field besides what David called a clod of dirt, then I think that they have an argument that the deal as presented was you would pursue to the end, in good faith, the effort to put that MPEV in. And even though it's not in the contract, we did not guarantee that because we could not guarantee that. We sure told them that it's part of the plan.
Other questions? Going once, going twice. Richard, thank you.